This is part 142 of ASP.NET tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss implementing Contact Us page using ASP.NET and C#. In part 141 of this video series, we have discussed designing the Contact Us page. Please watch part 141 before proceeding with this video. In this video, we'll be implementing the server-side code. So when we click this submit button, we want to send the details that the user has entered in this form to the administrator of the website. So basically here we have a sample email that is sent to the administrator. And notice that whatever details that we have entered on this form are present in this email that is sent to the administrator. For example, here the subject is test subject, and that is present in the subject line of the email. And then the name, email, and comments are present within the body of the email. Let's see how to implement this. Let's flip to Visual Studio. So this is the project that we have been working with in part 141. So when I click this button, that's when we need to send the email. Okay, so to send an email, we need to compose mail message object, and this mail message class is present in a different namespace, system.net.mail. So let's bring that in. And then we don't need these other namespaces here, so let's get rid of them to keep code simple. Alright, so let's go ahead and build mail message object, and let's call this reference variable as mail message. So obviously to send an email we need the from and to address. In this case the from and to are both going to be the administrator email address, because we'll be harvesting the values from the form and then we'll be sending an email to the administrator. Okay, so and if you look at this from property, what does it expect? It expects an object of type mail address. So let's go ahead and create a new mail address object, and then the constructor of this class expects an email address to be passed. So here we give our Gmail address. So let's say I'm giving my Gmail address here, and then we also need to specify the to address. So I mean, you can send email to multiple people, so you can have multiple to addresses. So if you look at this to property, it's actually a mail address collection. So you can have as many to emails as you want, but I just want to send the email to the administrator of the site, so I'm going to add an email to the mail address collection property of this mail message object. And look at this, there are several two overloaded versions of this add method. I'm going to use this overloaded version where we can specify the email address as a string. So I basically want to send an email to the same address. So we are going to send an email from this address to this address. So we're going to send an email to ourselves, but with the details that the end user has entered on this form. Alright, so we have specified the from and to address. The next thing is to specify the subject. So mail message dot subject. And where are we going to get the subject? The subject is going to come from the subject text box. So txt subject dot text. And then the next important thing is the comments that the end user has entered. So I mean, basically not only comments, we need to send name, email, and comments as part of the body of the email. So we need to specify the body of the email. So let's go ahead and set the body, mail message.body. And if you look at this body, it's nothing but a string. So we need to build our string. Okay, so the body, if you look at the body of the email, first we need sender name, and that should be bolded. So let's include a bold tag, and then this text sender name. Alright, and then to that we need to concatenate the name of the sender. So where are we going to get the sender name? From this text box, txt name. So let's go ahead and retrieve the name of the person who is submitting this form. And then once we have the sender name, sender email should be in the next line, so we need to include a break there. So let's go ahead and include an HTML break. Alright, so let's copy this. So to that we need now sender email and the email itself. So let me paste that and we will change this as required. So sender email, and again that will be bolded, and where are we going to get the email from? From email text box. And then once we have the sender email, next finally we need comments. And where are we going to get the comments from? Comments text box. So comments, and we are going to get the comments from comments text box. Okay, so we can get rid of this break right here. Alright, so we have composed the mail message body. But then look at this, the body of this email contains some HTML as well. So we need to tell the mail message object that its body contains HTML. And the way to do that is by setting this property, is body HTML, and notice that it's a Boolean property. So let's set that to true. Alright, so we have done composing the mail message itself. We have specified from, to, subject, and the body. The next thing is to send the mail message object. And to do that, we are going to make use of another class called SMTP client. Again, this class is present in the same namespace, system.net.mail. So let's go ahead and create an instance of this class. So SMTP client is equal to new SMTP client, and this class has got 3 overloads, but we are going to use this overload where we need to specify the host name and the IP address that we are going to use to send the email. So I want to use Gmail to send an email. So I'm going to use Gmail's SMTP server name. So here Gmail's SMTP server name is smtp.gmail.com. If you're working for an organization, then most likely your organization will have an SMTP server name. So you can use that in this case. Okay, so the name is going to be smtp.gmail.com. That's the name of the SMTP server, and the port number is 587. So let's go ahead and include that. So we have the SMTP client now. And look at that, Gmail works on HTTPS protocol. So if you look at this Gmail here, it's working on HTTPS protocol, meaning SSL, we need to enable SSL. So there's something called SMTP client.enable SSL. Again, that's a Boolean property. So let's go ahead and set that to true. And then the final one thing is we need to specify the credentials from the account, from which we are sending an email. So we are sending the email from this account. So we need to specify the username and the password. So we need to specify the credentials, and to do that, this SMTP client object has got this credentials property, and we need to create an instance of the credentials. So system.network. So system.net.network credential. So let's go ahead and create an instance of that object. And we need to specify the username and password. So the username is going to be your Gmail ID. In this case, it's going to be my Gmail ID. And then the password. So we need to specify the password. I'm not going to type that in here, but then in your case, you can specify your password. Alright, so we have specified the credentials as well. So the next step is to basically send the email itself, and to do that, so this SMTP client object has got the send method. So to the send method, you give your mail message object. That function is going to send the mail message to whomever you have specified in the to list. At the moment, we only have the one user who is nothing but the administrator of your site. Okay, alright, so we have sent the email. Once we have sent the email, what we need to do, we need to convey that status information to the user. Maybe we want to display this message, thank you for contacting us. And we have a label control on the form. So there's label 1 control. So that's the label we are going to use to set the status. So label1.text is equal to something like thank you for contacting us. And then if you notice, we are setting, since it's a success, I want to set the forecolor of the label to blue. So to do that, label1.forecolor is equal to, again, this expects a color property which is present in system.drawing namespace. So let's go ahead and include that, system.drawing.color dot whatever, blue or red, whatever you want. All right. And then the final one thing that we need to do is we need to disable all these controls and the text and the submit button. So basically, text name.enable is equal to false. So we need to do the same thing for all the other text boxes and the button control itself. So text name, text email, text comments, text subject, and finally the button one control. Okay, so now if you look at this code, this present directly in this button one click event. So if everything works fine, that's fine. But if there is an exception, we need to handle that exception. So let's wrap all this code inside a try catch block. So let's put that inside a try block. And then if at all, if there is an exception, we want to catch the exception. Obviously, this exception object is going to contain the information about the exception that has occurred, and then we basically will log the exception information either to the event viewer or to a database table. Okay, so that the administrator can later look at that exception and fix that error. Okay, and obviously if there is an exception, we were not successful in sending an email, so what we need to do then, we need to display a meaningful message to the user. Something like, there is an unknown problem, please try later. A meaningful message to the end user. And then since we were not successful in sending the email, maybe I want to set forecolor to red. Alright. Okay, so now if we go ahead and run this, we should be able to send an email. Now I'm not going to do that now. This will not be successful at this point of time because we haven't specified the password. But if you specify your password, you should be able to send an email successfully. In fact, look at the email. I have successfully received the email. I have the test subject, sender name, sender email, and the comments that I have entered on the form. Alright, now another important thing to keep in mind here is, look at this. We are relying on the client-side validation to validate the form, this form. Now this client-side validation works only if JavaScript is enabled, but we can disable the JavaScript. So if you disable JavaScript, then client-side validation doesn't work, and obviously the click event on the server will be executed. So even if you don't enter the values for the required fields, this code will try to be executed. We don't want this code to be executed if there is an exception. I mean, if the user hasn't provided all the values here. So to ensure that this code is not executed unless until the validation has succeeded, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if page.isValid property. So this property is going to return true only if all the validation controls have succeeded. If even one validation control fails validation, then this property is going to return false, in which case none of these code will be executed and the end user will continue to have these error messages displayed, because the validation controls that we have in ASP.NET, they provide both server-side and client-side validation. So if JavaScript is enabled, client-side validation will continue to work as normal. But if JavaScript is disabled, client-side validation doesn't work. But since we are checking isValid property in the button click event, this is going to ensure that only if all the validation controls have succeeded validation, it's going to execute this piece of code. Otherwise, nothing will happen. The web form will be re-rendered, and then basically the end user will have a chance to look at the validation error messages. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.